if you look at concentration of ownership, the unfair distribution of wealth and income, and Citizens United, you look at all of those things, what you are seeing in this country is a strong movement today away from the democratic foundations which made this the greatest country on earth into an oligarchic form of government where economic and political power rests with a handful of billionaire corporations. And our task in this election and the day after the election is to make sure not only that that does not happen, but that we strengthen the democratic foundations and economic foundations of this country so that government works not just for the billionaires, but for the working families of this country. Now, some of you painfully may have observed some of the Republican convention. And I want to just very briefly review what these guys are about and where they want to go. For a start, after everything is said and done, their economic program is a return to the program of George W. Bush, who had the worst economic record in the modern history of the United States of America. Do we really want to go back? No. I didn't even ask the question. I got the answer. All right. To an economic program under Bush where 8 million Americans slipped out of the middle class and went into poverty. No. Do we really want to go back to a political doctrine which resulted in median family income declining by over $2,000? No. Where 6.5 million Americans lost their health insurance? No. Where we lost 5.5 million manufacturing jobs? No. No. All that the Republicans are about is Bush doctrine, which means more tax breaks for millionaires and billionaires, which means more unfettered free trade so the corporations can shut down in New Hampshire, Vermont, and America and run to China and Vietnam. More deregulation so that Wall Street can do more of what it did that got us into this disaster in the first place. And I think the answer is no, no, no. We do not want to go back to the Bush economic doctrine. Furthermore, let me say this to the men more than to the women. Because I want men to understand or to put themselves in the place of women. In the Republican Party platform that was just passed last week, this is what the Republicans said. What they said is that if a woman was raped, she had to have the baby of the rapist, even if it meant that her own life was at stake. Now, I don't know whose values they think they are representing when they engaged in that kind of attack against women, but it is not, in my view, the values of Vermont, the values of New Hampshire, or the values of the United States of America. Studied global warming and written about it in peer-reviewed articles tell us global warming is real, causing damage today, and is significantly caused by human activity. The new chairman of the Environmental Committee, if the Republicans regain control of the Senate, believes that global warming is a hoax. This country will not go forward unless we believe in science, we believe in technology, and we cannot allow people who ignore some of the most important scientific truths to get elected. In the next couple of weeks and months, probably the main issue that you're going to be hearing about is deficit reduction. And I want to call your attention to just a few facts. If we're going to talk about dealing with deficit reduction, you got to know how we got into this deficit situation in the first place. Something our Republican friends seem to have forgotten. So let's remind them of what happened. In January of 2001, when Bill Clinton left office and George W. Bush took over, this country had a $236 billion surplus. And the economists were telling us that the projections for the future were larger and larger surpluses. Under Bush and the so-called deficit hawks, this is what happened. They went to war in Afghanistan and Iraq, probably end up costing us some $3 trillion. They forgot to pay for the wars. Put it up on the credit card. Those are the deficit hawks. They gave tax breaks to the richest 2%, adding another $1 trillion into the deficit. And then after running up this huge deficit, these born-again deficit hawks are back. And this is what they say. They said, well, yeah, we forgot to pay for the war. Yeah, we gave tax breaks to billionaires. Yeah, we wrote a Medicare Part D prescription drug program that forgot to negotiate prices with the drug companies. Yeah, we ran up a huge deficit, but we have to deal with it now. And let me tell you how they want to deal with it. In order to pay for the war, they want to cut Social Security. Now, not only is that wrong, it makes no sense because Social Security hasn't contributed one nickel to the deficit because it is funded by the payroll tax. So let us stand united and say that Social Security, which for the last 77 years has paid out every nickel owed to every eligible American, you are not going to cut it and endanger the seniors and the disabled people of this country. And then they've got another brilliant idea. And here's their idea. They want to privatize Medicare, Paul Ryan's idea, and give folks, not today, in 10 years or so, a check for $10,000 or $8,000. Now, I want you all to be thinking. You're a 70-year-old senior citizen. You walk into a doctor's office. You're diagnosed with a serious illness, and you have a check for $8,000, which you could take to your local private insurance company. Now, you tell me how long that check lasts. You tell me what that private insurance company says when you walk in and say, hi, I've got cancer, I've got serious heart disease, here's my check for $8,000. And by then they have repealed the Affordable Care Act and pre-existing conditions. What do you think that insurance company is going to say to that senior? Take a walk. We don't need you because we can't make any money off of you. They want to cut Medicaid. We have 50 million people uninsured today. They want even more kids, working families uninsured. So let me just conclude by saying this. We are in the fight of our lives. We are fighting not just for ourselves, but more importantly for our kids. I've got 4 grandchildren. I have 7. You have kids and grandchildren. We are fighting as to whether or not this country becomes a nation of the rich, by the rich, and for the rich, and a shrinking middle class and an increase in poverty. We are fighting whether or not those who retire can live in dignity, have good health care, or whether we cut Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. Now, amassed against us in this fight are billionaires, many of whom, it seems to me, want nothing more than more and more and more. But we are going to beat them, and I will tell you why. Because on our side are tens and tens of millions of people who have a different understanding of what this country is about. An understanding that all of us All of us are entitled to a decent standard of living, economic and social justice. Our goal is not to allow us to be divided up by this or that wedge issue. Our goal is to stand together to fight for justice and make government work for all of us and not just the people on top. Thank you all very, very much.